calling the Berkley School Committee meeting for tonight, January 8th, 2018. We'll all call to order for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like we have some guests for tonight.
Yes, we have many.
Yes, we do.
And Mrs. Coca, are you going to introduce them?
I'd like to introduce these awesome
Oh, okay.
line up in a row so that you can face the audience. Everybody, so there's no classroom down there, you come over here. All right, and so these awesome third grade students are students who have done a famous person project, and so you can see that they have a display that they'll be sharing with you and telling you a little bit about who they are and what special things they did. Okay, so when you introduce yourself, I'd like you to say your name, your first and last name, what class you're in, and then tell who your project is about. Would you like to go first? Okay. Yes, your real first name. That's a really good question. Your real first name of your classroom teacher, and then who your project is. And I'm going to have you step up so that you can show everybody the part.
Benjamin Franklin, 3F.
Excellent. So tell us, what do you want to share about your project?
Invented to see far and under. And the harmonica plays music with water and glass.
Those are very interesting facts. Did you want to share one thing from your poster that you obviously took a long time to make?
The lightning rod, he went out in a thunderstorm and thought electricity was real.
Excellent. Very good. Don't forget to introduce yourself. You can step right up.
My name is Grace Sweeney from Miss Gilmont's third grade class, and I am representing Nancy Carrington. She was born on October 13th, 1969, and she is famous because she overcame a knee injury and won a silver medal at the Winter Olympics.
And did you want to share one special thing about your poster?
Nancy Kerrigan's full name is Nancy Ann Kerrigan.
Wonderful.
My name is Jack Trainer, and I'm present. My name is Jack Trainer, and I am dressed up as Benjamin Franklin. He was born on January 17th, 1709. He died on April 17th, 1790.
Excellent. Is there something you'd like to share?
He wanted his national bird to be a turkey. My name is Colton Goob. I'm in Mrs. Bolger's class, and my project is Paul Revere. Paul Revere was born on January 1st, 1735. He passed away on May 10th. Paul Revere was part of the Sons of Liberty that fought against the British. On April 18, 1775, Paul warned the Patriots that the British army was coming.
Excellent. Can you hold your poster nice and high so everyone can see? Very good.
My name is Isabella Evelyn Giardini, and my poster is about Deborah Sampson. My class is 3F. Deborah Sampson was born on December 17th, 1760, and she died on April 29th, 1827, at the age of 66 because of yellow fever.
That doesn't sound good. Is there anything else you want to
and she got, and when she was in battle, she got cut in the head and a shot in the leg. And because she was in battle, she was the first woman that dressed up as a man in the military. Yeah, and she got honorably discharged. My name is Elin McDonough from Miss Borges' class. I'm representing Louisa May Alcott. Her birthday was November 29th, 1832. The day she died was March 6, 1888. Louisa May Alcott was sweet, graceful, and was kind to other people. Little Woman was based on her family's life. Louisa May supported her family by selling her books. She was born in Germantown, Pennsylvania. She moved to New England in 1840. My name is Magdalena McCauley in Miss News' class, and my famous person was Deborah Sampson. Deborah Sampson was born on December 17, 1760 in Plimpton, Massachusetts. She was the oldest of 7 children. Deborah Sampson died of yellow fever on April 29, 1827 in Sharon, Massachusetts at the age of 66. At the age of 21, Deborah Sampson impersonated a man and enlisted in the 4th Massachusetts Regiment of the Continental Army under the name Robert Shirtliff. She fought in the Revolutionary War for 2 years as a soldier. And during a battle near Tarrytown, New York, Deborah was shot in the left thigh. Instead of having a surgeon remove the bullet, Deborah took it out herself so doctors would not discover that she was a girl. My name is Peyton, and I'm from Miss Borges' class. My person is Alexander Graham Bowell. Alexander was born in Scotland. He lived in Boston, Massachusetts. He also lived in Canada, where he died. In 1888, Bell was one of the founding members of National Geographic Society and helped to establish its journal. And he was also born in March 3rd, 1847, and died in August 2nd, 1922.
So we thank you, boys and girls. This was an amazing collection of some of the hard work that they've been doing in 3rd grade. You were fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
You guys want some cookies? If that's okay with your parents? Yay!
Good job, man.
Okay, as several of you know, this is your last night. We do have a plaque which states that in recognition of 3.5 years of service to the Berkley School Committee, it's not an easy job, and to anyone that you know, wants to try and do it, we welcome you. Because as you know, there's going to be a lot of openings in the school committee in the upcoming months. All right, so anyone here can attest it's, you know, it's time consuming and it can be a very stressful job, especially mentally. All right, so we thank you. You did a great job.
Thank you all.
Right along, the bills and payrolls have been approved, and at this time, I'm looking for an approval of the December 18th regular meeting minutes. Second. There's a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. And the December 18th executive session minutes.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence and enclosures, Mr. Lynch.
Yes, Mr. Patrick, we have just a few enclosures this month. One is the attendance, which we are down to 923, and I think it should be stressed that we are down to 90 school choice kids. At the beginning of the year, we had 97. And as you know, that's a revenue source that we depend upon. And most of those, the reason why it's gone down is because students' families are actually moving to town. We've had a few purchase homes elsewhere, but last year we lost 9 or 10, and they all had moved to Berkley. And we do have some correspondence and notes from the middle school principal and Mrs. Francisco as well, and I'm sure they will touch on that information as the meeting progresses.
Thank you. And at this time, do we have any public input? Folks, no one has anything to say? Okay. Educational reports.
Sure, I'll go first this month. Good evening, everyone. I know we have a lot to get through, so just a couple of highlights. We are continuing our strong work with our representatives from the Bay State Reading Institute. They will be coming in to do some ELA professional development this month, as well as do some classroom walkthroughs. The middle school staff has done an amazing job embracing these instructional strategies that they're actually bringing some teachers from another school district to see how well it is being done here, in the hopes that they will be able to mimic that back in their own school. So we're very happy to be a Bay State spotlight school for them. There is a date change for the school dance this month. We had to move it to the 26th with some scheduling issues, but just to make reference to that, in case you all want to come, it will now be the 26th, not the 12th. We have a social on the 18th. We have our first debate meet of the year as part of the Massasoit League. Under the direction of Mrs. Boyle and Mrs. Tabor, our debate team will be heading over to Case Junior High School on Friday for their first debate meet, so we want to wish them all good luck. As we have done for the last several years, we have an 8th grade student who will be representing us at the Governor's Project 351. Our ambassador this year is Tommy Rose, so we're very, very proud of him for being selected by his 8th grade team. He will participate in a day-long community service event with 350 other middle school students this coming Saturday, so we will certainly welcome him to join us at the February school committee meeting to tell us all about his adventures. Our ELA MCAS remediation classes for those students who qualified based on last year's MCAS scores will begin next week. Letters have gone home to families. We have several students who've shown interest already in the PCC, Project Contemporary Competitiveness Summer Program, so we hope that we have more students who are interested in participating in that. I wanted to add a teacher highlight. Mrs. Catherine Withrow, our grade 7 special education teacher, held a book tasting with her academic support class this past week. The students were grouped by their Lexile levels, which is part of our Bay State reading initiatives, and were given the chance to sample 4 books from which they were to choose one for their next reading assignment. She had the room set up with a roaring fireplace on the whiteboard. There were tables with juice and donuts, and they sampled the books based on their reading levels and their interest, and then were to choose one that they will be reading in their academic support class. So it was just a wonderful way to incorporate some of the literacy strategies and make it fun for students. So that was a highlight from one of her colleagues that we wanted to share. So happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I will also just share a couple of highlights for you. Prior to the winter break, there were many special winter activities going on in our early childhood classrooms. In particular, the preschool classes had their parents in for winter activities and performances in their classrooms.
our kindergartners took their traditional ride on the Polar Express and enjoyed that story and themes related to that. Grade 1 classrooms did workshop-based activities as they normally do to learn about how holidays are celebrated in different cultures. I want to thank all of the staff for their efforts in organizing those educational experiences for our students. We did have an opportunity for our 4th grade students to entertain their families in the morning, and then our entire school family in the afternoon, playing handbells, singing, using instruments, all under Mrs. Reynolds' direction. And we were fortunate to have a little school-wide sing-along before the break as well. Our MCAS tutorial program will also start, not next week, the week after, so the invitations are out to all students who qualify for that program, and we look forward to getting started with it. We're currently finishing, or I shouldn't say finishing, we're currently in the process of working through the winter administration of the DIBELS reading testing as well as the grade comprehension testing in all classes, grades, well, the DIBELS in K through 4 and the grade in grades 1 through 4. We're looking forward to being able to note the progress of our students, and we will follow that up with data meetings at which we do instructional planning for our students. Our PTO has some exciting events coming up, including a luau themed dance for BCS girls and their leading man, which will take place on February 9th. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. It will be an event later in the year to be revealed later for BCS boys and their leading ladies.
So do we have an update on the Bay State reading? Other than what you
Just
mentioned?
that our continued work with the literacy and coaches.
Okay, administrative and school committee reports. Report on the Somerset Berkley Regional School Committee.
The seniors are now in the process of selecting their colleges and applying for scholarships and waiting patiently to hear where the next segment of their journey will take them into their education. We are rapidly approaching the time of the year where underclassmen will look to choose classes for the upcoming year. New beginnings breathe in new life. We are excited to see what our students will create, innovate, discover. On January 8th, Chris Herron, I think most of you are familiar with the basketball player who was a drug addict, and he presented a program to the high school. He calls it Project Purple. And Herron he has a nonprofit foundation established. He was a former NBA player, and he discussed with students addiction and stigmas of addiction and being aware of the dangers of substance abuse, and he encourages positive decision-making to navigate life's changes. The other thing we want to bring up is on the 12th, it's a half day at the high school. They will be out at 11:30 a.m. And for those of you who wish, there are still open parking spaces in the parking lot. So if your students are driving and they don't have a parking pass, they do have some available. And students and parents will be selecting courses for the upcoming 2018-2019 school year. The online selection process enables parents and students to have conversations about future courses. These conversations and selections are imperative, as selections for the new year cannot be changed for lateral changes or elective changes. So the students will be able to change classes if there is a level change within the guidelines stated in the handbook, for those of you who have students in the high school. Okay, in 2017, the PSAT and MSQT results are in. Please be advised that the paper score reports from the October tests have been shared with all the students. And for students who took the test and created a College Board account, you may also have received an email from College Board about assessing the scores online. And we have a thank you to all the staff and community members that made our annual holiday Adopt a Family. We were able to help over 25 families during the season. A special thank you to Mrs. Nassif for all of her hard work. And we need to congratulate Mr. Marshall, who has been named, he's our music director, but he has now also been named as the content coordinator for the Fine Arts and Performing Arts. And near and dear to my heart, the DECA competition is on the 9th and 10th in Mansfield. And we had 15 kids at the house last night cramming, and there'll be more cramming tomorrow so they could get ready for their test. But we're pleased to announce that there has been a marked improvement in the test scores. We've been concentrating on working with the students because that's a third of their grade when they do compete. So hopefully with the higher test scores and what we teach them to do in their oral presentation, we'll be sending a lot of kids to Boston. And then of course the next stop will be Atlanta, which is the international competition.
So we had a lot of meetings scheduled last week, Thursday specifically, and we had budget, we had a full committee meeting scheduled, and alas, none of that happened. So between the holidays and all of our meetings getting canceled last Thursday, there isn't a whole heck of a lot to report on that front. However, I've been communicating with both superintendents over the last few weeks about the possibility of putting together on February 6th a public forum specifically to talk about net school spending, which is a topic that has been coming up a little bit more frequently in recent months. And I think it's one that's a mystery to a lot of folks. And I think that having a public forum that included both of our superintendents, both of our business managers, as well as someone from the state, to come and just have an open conversation about what it is, what it means, and that sort of thing would be a positive. So I'm looking for the blessing, not necessarily a vote, but certainly the blessing of this committee to push forward with that. I do think that there's a lot of folks in the community that would benefit from this conversation. Lord knows I'm not an expert, so having this conversation could be beneficial, especially considering the budgetary constraints and issues that we have as we look forward to FY19. So, does anyone on the committee have any questions or concerns about pursuing this? Both superintendents, Mr. Schoonover and Mr. Lynch, both feel that this is a good idea and they're supporting it. The hope is that we will have it here at the middle school, so it'll be easily accessible to those of us who live in Berkley.
All for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Set the date.
And so the tentative date would be February the 6th. And it'd be 6:30 here at this building, although I haven't actually cleared that with Mrs. Hebert yet, so I don't know if...
Are you going to be looking for people, are you going to want this space or the cafeteria?
Probably the cafeteria.
Okay.
That's got a nice forum-y feel to it. I know how to work that room. Thank you.
Next up, the annual report of the school department for the year 2017. We all have them, copies of them. And we need to approve that.
Yes, Mr. Patrick, with the input of course, Mrs. Sylvia, puts most of this together, along with myself and the principals and the business manager. This is the report that goes to the selectmen each year and to the town.
Do you have any questions for the superintendent?
I make a motion to accept the report of the school committee dated January 2nd, 2018.
Second.
One minor correction. I was elected well in the future. 20,000 or 15. So
Oh.
just I'm so forward thinking I haven't been elected for 18,000
But
years.
you expired.
We're thinking of your future.
Yeah,
We
we
want
go.
you
There we go.
Make a motion to accept the report as
to take out a zero.
amended.
Second.
The motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
The school department budget
Typo.
for 2017-18.
Well, we have the district improvement plan first. Oh, 17-18 budget? The 17-18 budget is intact. We do not see any deficits at the moment. It is very tight, though.
Mr. Lynch, can you elaborate on what very tight means?
It means that due to some unknown costs this year and outside special education costs especially, we're extremely tight this year. And usually we're able to buy some supplies at the end of the school year with, because we have to budget for 40,000 gallons of heating oil. With this degree of coldness, these buildings have had to stay warm or would have pipes freezing. So we don't expect a great deal of revenue or leftover funds in that line item that we usually use for supplies and other areas.
What kind of strain do you expect that to put on the FY19 budget? You guys
So that'll put a significant strain because last year we bought, Mrs. Hebert and Mrs. Francisco as well as Mr. McCarthy were able to purchase a lot of our supplies so that we're able to reduce our current budget. But we don't anticipate being able to do that to the degree that we have been in the past.
How many oil deliveries have we had this year?
We have had 2 so far,
And we budgeted
4.
but we're probably due for one.
No, we just had one rather recently.
So we need
But
to
we
pray,
go through about 200 gallons a day
so
in
we
this
need-
building.
So we need to pray for warmth, is what you're saying?
Exactly.
First answer for this week.
This week is
Yeah.
not, this week and last week have not been good. And even though we were out of the building most of the time, we still have to keep the heat at certain degrees or pipes would freeze and would have colossal disasters.
Any other questions? Okay, the district improvement plan, I believe was tabled from the last one, right?
Yes, it was, and I talked to the admin team about that, and I know the question, the goal in question was goal number 1, and I just want to read that to clarify it, because we believe that it still should remain our main goal, even though it's difficult to attain. And that reads, by utilizing the current appropriated budget, Berkley Public Schools will maintain current average class sizes, preserve and possibly restore educational programs, and increase integration of technology in the classroom settings in the 2017-18 school year. And even though we realize that through the generosity of the community, this past year we were able to keep our programs and retain relatively small class sizes. And through the donation of our elementary PTO program, we were able to get a cart with computers on it. And without those donations, we would not be able to attain this goal. But we do believe that it has to be a driving goal because of the importance of the educational programs, of the technology in the classrooms, especially with MCAS depending on it, and the small class sizes for more one-to-one attention for students.
Any questions on the district improvement plan?
So as we talked about last month, by utilizing the current appropriated budget, only takes into consideration what was appropriated from the town. And as you just described, the goals that you articulate further on in that paragraph aren't attainable through that. So really my main area of concern here is we're setting ourselves an underpinning goal that's unachievable based upon the budgetary constraint in the community. So certainly if we feel
Well, we believe that regardless of how difficult it is or how difficult it is to manage and attain, that we believe that our goal still has to be to maintain small class sizes and strong educational programs and integrating technology into the curriculum and into the classroom.
I don't
again,
disagree with any of that. I'm just saying that, you know, by utilizing the current appropriated budget, if that's all we worked with, was the appropriated budget. You know, the technology cart that you talked about, that was purchased for us by the PTO wouldn't have happened, so our technology,
We would have fallen behind.
our increase in technology integration
Correct.
wouldn't have happened. And the, possibly restore educational programs wasn't possible through the budget that was appropriated. So big chunks of the goal that you're setting aren't achievable by the source that you're describing. So really, that's my only, you know, my only question with this is that, you know, this is something that becomes part of, you know, the public record for a long period of time, correct?
That's
It's a
correct.
reasonably important document, so therefore, you know,
And we do submit it to the Department of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education.
so if it's just that that's our goal, then that's great, but the reality of it is that, the goal that we set, it couldn't have been met the way that, we set it.
Well, a couple of the strategies I know to be used or to work with the finance committee, the select board, in order to reach the goals, we have strategies in there that are set. Another one is to meet with state legislative officials. So are these strategies, how are we using these strategies to attempt to meet the goals? I think would be a good question.
Right. Well, through the budget season, we do meet with the Finance Committee several times. And generally speaking, the selectmen are present at those meetings. We did have, in fact, you and Mrs. Vincent, Mr. Gillipucci, and myself were present at a legislative breakfast where I did actually speak on net school spending and the foundation budget and its inadequacies. And we still have to continue to meet with and speak with Senator Pacheco and Representative Keiko Worrell.
So, Mr. Larrabee, are you suggesting that the language on
I
that
think we
goal?
should change
The language?
some of
I
those words.
just think that, you know, the goal is not, you know, we're setting the goal that we didn't, because this is sort of backward looking. You know, it's the 17-18 school year, we're already halfway through it. So the budget for the 17-18 school year was what we all suffered through last summer. And, you know, so as a result of that, I just think that, you know, if this is gonna be a matter of public record, I think that it should be adjusted to represent reality as opposed to, you know, yeah, it was our goal, but, it wasn't achievable. If we're voting on it now, you know, I think it should be amended to reflect the realities we face.
would by putting the word try in front of maintain, try to maintain?
Like the word
Will
appropriate,
attempt to maintain
I think it's the word appropriated here.
I think it's
It's the word appropriate
current
that is.
appropriated,
current
yeah.
appropriated budget and
Mr.
Other
Lynch,
revenue sources.
can we take out that first phrase
or if we took
necessary
out the word,
to utilizing the current appropriated budget? That our goal, regardless, is to maintain, or attempt to maintain, you know, try to make current average class sizes, preserve and possibly restore educational programs, and increase integration of technology in the classroom setting, and take
Period.
out, period. So take out
Well,
using the budget.
if we took out everything before that comma, if we took out by utilizing the current appropriated budget, if we took that out, and then for the goal to read, the Berkeley Public Schools will attempt to maintain current average class size through whatever is necessary.
Works for me.
To make that change on page 4 as well as page 5.
Yeah.
That's good. Mrs. Francisco?
I was just gonna suggest that, one of the things that I've worked hard on with our school council is to state the goal as what the goal should be. And so I don't think our goal just should be to attempt it. I think our goal should be to maintain current average class sizes, preserve or restore the educational programs, and increase integration of technology. I think it's really important that we not say, well, our goal is just gonna be to attempt to do that. We may make a valiant attempt and not achieve this goal. But I do think that if we're trying to be the best advocates on behalf of the children of Berkeley, then I think that we should write the goal as to what our goal is. And if we make a valiant effort and don't achieve it, then that's okay. That's a reality. But I'm not sure that we should, in my opinion, put in a word like
Modifier.
attempt, which just says that we'll give it a good shot. I agree with taking the years out of there, I think both at the beginning, as Mr. Lynch suggested, and at the end. But just something that we've worked hard on as a school council and writing our school improvement goals is the same type of issue. I'm trying to really avoid language that gets anywhere away from what our best statement of goal would be. So I just throw that out for thought.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so do we want to vote on this as is?
Vote as amended.
Yeah, vote is-
Okay, let's be clear on what the amendment represents.
So goal number one will be revised to delete everything before the first comma, and then it will read, Berkeley Public Schools will maintain current average class sizes, preserve and possibly restore educational programs, and increase integration of technology in the classroom setting.
Period, no yours.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the district improvement plan as amended by Mr. Larrabee.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion in the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Policy readings. Okay, these are second readings that have been recommended by the policy subcommittee. So I'm sure we've had, since they have a second reading, I'm sure we've had time to kind of go over them. I'm looking for a motion to approve homework policy number 5105.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
A motion to approve the prohibiting hazing policy number 6720.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And the use of tobacco products number 6761.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
The school food services program policy 7600.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And the school building construction policy, which is to delete, and design selection policies, to delete that whole policy, 7550.
So moved.
So
And 7540.
And 7540.
Yes.
And by point of explanation on those two, that was recommended by the Mass Association of School Committees because the Mass School Building Authority handles all construction.
Those policies have been, I believe, for some years now.
Well, one of the bottom of one of these policies, it says it was written in 1948.
Nice.
Never went out of style.
Yeah.
So moved. We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, presentation of the preliminary budget for 2018-19 school year. Got a few of them. Can you see a little better?
No, nothing.
No, I'm good. Okay, before I start with the presentation, I'm going to give some history here. The fiscal year history of FY '18, that's the current budget we're in right now. We were forced to reduce our budget by $547,000. That was $236,000 below our operating budget of the prior year. 9 positions were lost when this happened. 5 were restored due to $185,000 from community and business donations. If you recall, we lost 2 music teachers, both art teachers, and the community school librarian. Overall, we still lost 5 positions, even though through those very generous donations, we were able to restore music, art, and library at the community school. We still lost middle school Spanish, a special ed teacher in grade 1, a grade 1 teacher, and 2 other positions. Over the last several years, we have lost 16 positions throughout the district. Our health insurance costs. It has been said in public meetings that the school district has cost the town additional money after restoring the positions that were brought back. This is untrue. The district's health insurance costs are less than what was appropriated at town meeting. Administration. Some in town have said that the district is heavy with administrators. We have 2 principals, two assistant principals, a special needs director, a business administrator, and a superintendent. We do not have any department heads like every other district. We do not have any special needs coordinators like every other district. We do not have a guidance counselor in the middle school. We do not have a curriculum director, and we do not have a technology director, despite having over 700 computers. School choice. We began accepting school choice as our natural Berkeley enrollment began to decrease. It was done so as to provide technology to our students and faculty. When I began here, we had 1 computer in each classroom that was 7 to 10 years old. We had very little infrastructure throughout both schools, and we did not have a wireless network. We did not have computer instruction at the community school. We now have 5 to 7 computers per classroom. We have wireless networks in each school and 3 computer labs, 2 at each middle school and 1 at the community school. Most of this was funded through school choice funds. Some was provided by the generosity of the PTO. As our budget began to shrink with less Chapter 70 and town funding, our school choice numbers began to support teaching staff as well as technology. Over the last several years, we would have had multiple program losses and layoffs without school choice. Yet, our class sizes have still remained relatively small. A concern that we are faced with right now is that our school choice numbers have gone down 7 students since last June. This is due in large part to students' families moving to town. The town has also begun to cut our budget by the amount of revenue we bring to the town and district through school choice. Last spring it was $547,000. However, we are only receiving $450,000 this year from the Department of Education. I'll now start this year's presentation. Berkeley School Committee consists of David Patrick, our chair, Ellen Bruno, our secretary, Chris Gilarducci, Dean Larrabee, and Jen Vincent. Our Berkeley administrative team includes Jen Francisco, community school principal, Sarah Kogar, the assistant principal, Kim Hebert, the middle school principal, Bill Welch, the middle school assistant principal, Melissa Donnelly, director of student services, which is the same as special education, Andrea Porter, our business administrator, Tim McCarthy, our director of maintenance of grounds, and Tom Lynch, myself as superintendent. I'm first going to go over the reasons for our increase, some of which are listed here. The fiscal year 19 budget. This preliminary budget represents what may be viewed as an extremely large increase. The greatest portions of the increase requests are to restore some of what was eliminated last spring. The 5 unified arts positions had to be put back into the budget. That's a big one. A special needs teacher and paraprofessional have been restored into the budget. Those are only the two new positions that we don't currently have that are in the budget. Our special needs budget has grown substantially due to outside placements. Coaching positions have been restored. This will reduce our user fees in half because we had to double those to $230 a sport. 2 of our vans have approximately 200,000 miles and we have budgeted to replace one at the cost of $38,000. A 5-year contract for mathematics workbooks has expired, so we must now purchase them. We have restored the ELA program for grades K through 5 at the tune of $63,000, so that's in the budget as well. At the end of each year, we attempt to buy teaching and custodial supplies from the existing budget. And as I mentioned before, we don't anticipate being able to do much of that this year. Another area is we have contractual obligations. And to stress these again, we have increase in collaborative assessments. We have depleted school choice account funds because we've had to put 4 teachers' salaries back into the regular budget that we're paying now from school choice. But that, as I mentioned, those funds are depleting. We have added an elementary special needs teacher. We have the acquisition of equipment, as I mentioned, the school van. We also have some school lighting that needs to be replaced, and the $185,650 in the gift account donations, which will not be there. Now I'll go over each section, the major sections of the budget. School committee legal, there's a slight increase in this area. That is due to the fact that we're in a contract year with the teachers. Mr. Patrick and Mrs. Bruno and I have been fortunate enough the last several negotiations not to use an attorney much, but we may have to this year, so we have to plan on that. Superintendent's office, that has everything to do with the superintendent's office, myself, my administrative assistant, all the supplies that go along with that, all the lease payments as far as supplies, and as far as leasing copy machines. Business office, that is Mrs. Porter, her assistants, or part-time assistant I should say, who does not work during the summer, and also some other supplies, for a total of $388,191. Our next major category is school leadership offices and building technology. Building and special needs leadership, that includes both principals, both assistant principals, and our special needs director, as well as her part-time secretary. Office support, we have 2 secretaries, 2 full-time secretaries, 1 in each building, and 2 part-time secretaries. Office expenses, that's all the copy machine paper and all the supplies that go along with that. Technicians, we have 2 technicians that support, as I mentioned, over 700 computers. Any outside work that has to be done, we have to bring in Oker's Computer Company, which charges us a reduced rate, so we are fortunate there. But that is what that costs. And then computer networks, $11,000. For a total of $776,169. Instructional costs, this is over 70% of our budget. Teaching, that includes all of our regular teachers, regular education teachers, which we have approximately 68 of, all of our paraprofessional teachers, all of our special needs teachers. We have a total of about 70 teachers, special ed and regular ed. That includes all the paraprofessionals, the teacher aides as well. Library services, instructional materials. This is the instructional materials, as I mentioned, includes all the supplies that we use, all the books that we use, the new ELA program that we hope to be able to get the math, the consumable workbooks that are used in the elementary school for math. We had our contract, we had a 5-year contract. We don't have that subscription anymore, so we have to re-up that, if you will, which is quite costly. Medical services, cafeteria, and physician. We do have 2 school nurses, plus the cafeteria, as well as we have to have a physician on call for any kind of emergencies. That's a very small fee. And professional development is $35,000. That includes BSF. Most of our professional development is paid for through grants, but some of this is course reimbursement for teachers because they are contractually obligated to take courses. Teachers are not only contractually obligated but state mandated to get a master's degree within 5 years after they begin teaching, and it has in their contract that they have course reimbursement. We also have Bay State Reading Initiative, which is we are starting to show great gains from in that line item. Athletics and extracurricular, as I mentioned, we did restore the athletic coaches stipends as well as the Bondale stipends. Collaborative assessments, as I've mentioned, I think 3 times already, this is a huge increase. We were very fortunate in the past. We've only had 1 or 2 outside placements. That number has grown substantially, so right now we have 4, and one of those students is particularly high.
Can you explain a little bit more about the collaborative assessments? How is that determined?
Yes, collaborative assessments are, we belong to 2 collaboratives. We belong to Reed's Collaborative, as well as South Coast Collaborative, Educational Collaborative. And when we have a student that we can't educate in-house, so to speak, within our own walls, because of numerous needs. It could be a deaf child, it could be a blind child, it could be a uniquely behavioral child, a very behind, delayed learning development child, any child that we can't service ourselves. Then we have to put that child in an outside placement. Some of those outside placements are residential. For instance, if we had a blind child move into this town, it would cost this town over $300,000 probably, because it would be residential. I know most towns do, and I know several superintendents extremely well that have such students. And
the state requires
and
us
it
to
is,
pay for that if
yes,
we
we
cannot
have to
service
provide
them
the least restrictive environment. Mrs. Donnelly, our special ed director, does a remarkable job, as well as Mr. Marcellus, keeping our students in district as much as they can. But sometimes that's not always plausible.
No, I understand. I just think it's important for people to understand that sometimes it's beyond our control, these costs, and you don't know, sometimes they'll come up and you're not even aware that they're going to come up.
Right.
Thank you
Can I
for
add one
explaining
thing
it.
to that?
Sure.
We do have one student right now who's placed residentially. That's probably our most, it's not probably, it is our most expensive student. That was not us who placed that student out, so sometimes there are circumstances that have to do with their family. I won't get into specifics, obviously, because of confidentiality, but that's beyond our control. So sometimes that comes up, and we have no say, we don't always know that that's going to happen. So that is one of the things that happened this year that caused our budget to increase.
Okay, thank you so much.
I think it's also important to note that the collaborative assessments line is up $192,000 from the previous year's budget. And based on the $7,420,144, which was the final budget that was passed by the voters of the town of Berkley, that $192,000 increase works out to be 2.587% all by itself in the FY19 budget.
And can I just add in, and historically, our out-of-district placements have been virtually none. I mean,
Right.
um,
Very
Only-
small
only-
comparatively to other districts.
we've been able to
We're
meet
at
the needs of our
3%.
children.
3% of our special ed students are placed outside of the school. Most towns are running 8 to 10 to 12%. So, as Mr. Lynch mentioned, the teachers, the special education staff, all of the staff really does an excellent job of keeping the kids in district as much as humanly possible.
I know several of my colleagues whose collaborative assessment budget is $2 to $3 million. Operation and maintenance, our custodial staff, as well as our director. Utilities, that includes our lights, our heating oil, our phones, and as I mentioned, we do budget for 40,000 gallons of heating oil a year. This is a variable cost here, as it is every year, because we go out to bid in about a month or so. So that this line item here could fluctuate. Maintenance of grounds, its materials. Maintenance of buildings, this line item is up a bit. Mr. McCarthy, as you know, does a remarkable job keeping things and doing things as much as he can here. This line item includes, as I mentioned, light bulbs for the other building that our capital subcommittee has reviewed, but that we're running out of wire. And the light bulbs that we need, they're not making them. So we need to buy some while they still have some. So that's $10,000 of that. Maintenance of equipment, $21,500. Extraordinary maintenance, $20,000. And security. Now remember, some of these line items here, we have been able to use surplus of our budget from other years, usually taken from our utilities line. But as I mentioned, with the uncertainty of heating oil costs and how much we'll have left in that line item, we don't know how much we'll be able to do that this year. For a total operation and maintenance of $724,274.
Mr. Lynch, can I just ask you to comment really quickly? I know that our utility, our custodial staff and those that maintain the buildings have done a tremendous job, and I think everybody realizes that, you know, the hard work that they put in. As far as our custodial salaries are concerned, would you say we're on the high end of the pay scale, the low end of the pay scale, somewhere in the middle?
We're way below. Okay. We're extremely below, to the point where we have lost people. We are, I know from other districts that I've worked in, we're approximately $10,000 to $15,000 less per custodian. So we're fortunate to keep the men that we have. Transportation, K-8 transportation. This will be the last year of this contract. This is for the 7 buses that we have, $350,500. Next year at this time, we'll be going out to bid. And usually, generally speaking, Bloom Transportation are the only bidders. And they've been very good about that. They don't try to gouge us. Van drivers, those are our special needs buses, and the drivers' salaries. If we didn't have our own vans, this line item would be at least 2 or 3 times more. A K-8 out of source transportation, that is in case we have a student where we do have to provide transportation that we don't have currently, that we may have to contract with another private company. Camp Horndale, $5,000. Homeless transportation, we received word actually today. Mrs. Porter came in and spoke to me that we've been fortunate this year. We haven't had too many homeless transportation, but we just received word that we do have a homeless child that is living in another district. Well, it's our responsibility under the McKinney Bento law to provide transportation to that district to and from wherever the child is sleeping. Van and gas supplies, $5,000. Van other expenses, $7,500. For a total of transportation, $490,530. Fixed charges and acquisitions, unemployment. This is $10,000, but if you recall last year, this line item grew substantially after our budget cut because if we have to lay off a person, we have to lay off usually another person to carry the unemployment. Because say if we lay off a person that's making $60,000, we still have to budget $30,000 in our unemployment line. So this line hopefully will stay here, but if we're looking at layoffs, this line item could go up substantially. Acquisition of equipment, and then replacement of equipment, that is the minivan that I mentioned earlier, for a total of $64,452. And then the budget comparisons, which I've alluded to throughout the presentation here. And you'll see the first column here is the major account. Then 2017-18 is our current budget year. 18-19 is next year's budget. And then the difference, the increase, or as far as fixed and acquisitions, the decrease. So administration costs, you see a difference or an increase of $3,363. School office and technology, an increase of $13,553. Instructional costs, an increase of $857,738. And the three biggest reasons, as I mentioned, is putting the teachers whose salaries were funded through the gift account and donations back into that. Those were 5 salaries. We had to pull 4 salaries off of school choice. And then, as we've been mentioning, the increase in special ed, out-of-district costs. So those are the 3, and contractual obligations. So those are the 4 major increases, plus the $63,000 for those new books and some additional costs with workbooks, as I mentioned. Operation and maintenance, an increase of $45,357. Transportation, an increase of $42,942. And fixed costs and acquisitions, a decrease of $66,858. So overall, our request, as I mentioned, is asking for a large increase with these reasons, from $7,420,144 to $8,316,239, for an increase basically $900,000, $896,000. And for these reasons why. And then a budget summary, administration, 308, and I'll round off here because I've said them several times. Administration, 388,000. School offices and building technology, 776,000. Instructional costs, 5,872,000, 33,000. Operation and maintenance, $724,000. Transportation, $490,530. Fixed charges, $64,500. For a total preliminary budget of $8,316,239. If you give me a second, I'm going to flip on to a couple of different slides. Mrs. Hebert, could you come up here, please?
circling you. I'm lining up against the others. You know what? I'm not sure. Here we go. Since I have the mouse, where is it now? Now go to, I'll show you where I'm going to go. We're going to go to budget summary.
Yep.
And then we're going to go down to copy of. So, budget summary.
Yep.
Then we're going to go to preliminary budget.
All right, okay. Yep, so I'm
And
gonna
then we're
touch.
going to go to.
Okay. We'll call it off and then we'll do it.
No?
No. That's a good one. Demarco, do a minute. That's true. Not sure why we're not shooting on this.
Plugged in.
He was on. That was just over this way.
Well, this is just my mouse, just my mouse, so I'm going to flash that. The preliminary budget summary comes up here. It's like going up there. And then you go to my.
Is that good?
Yeah, then you want to go to. It's a couple of lines down.
Okay, I'm sorry for the delay. So if we break down the budget, we have extras of these if you don't have one. This is a 2-page document, one with a graph. One has the pie. Pie graph. Can you speed down a little bit? I mean, up.
What's that?
You need to go up.
It's up in the bucket.
Which we're not, there we go. Okay, so if you look at this by major areas, and I've gone over these, you'll see the administration, and you can compare this to the pie, as I explained. But the pie chart, you'll see the large focal area is, as always, is instructional cost, which consists of 70.62% of the budget. Then operation and maintenance are 8.71% of the budget. School offices and building technology are 9.33% of the budget. Administration is 4.67% of the budget. Fixed charges are 0.12% of the budget. Acquisition and replacement of equipment are 0.65% of the budget. And that's the 100% of the budget. Can you click on the pie so we can get them on TV? We probably have to click out of this. It's in another document. And as I mentioned, and I'll just repeat these numbers, going from largest to smallest. Instructional costs of 7.62%. That's the big green area. And then, excuse me, and then school offices and building technology, 9.33% of the budget. Operation and maintenance, 8.71% of the budget. Administration, 4.67%. Acquisition and replacement of equipment, 0.65% of the budget. And fixed charges and insurance are 0.12%. Now that insurance, I think it's proper to point out, does not include health insurance. The town keeps that in a separate line now. That just includes the unemployment insurance, which we have only budgeted $10,000 in that line item. But as I mentioned, keep in mind that if we have to have layoffs, then that number will grow substantially. Anyone have any questions on this?
Let everybody else go first.
Mr. Larrabee?
You indicated early in your presentation that we needed to add a special needs teacher.
Yes.
What happens if we choose not to add a special needs teacher?
Mrs. Conlon?
So the reason we put in for an additional special education teacher, as you know, we lost a teacher this year. We did have an increase of students who are requiring significant amounts of services. And what happens if we don't meet their needs, we are required to, by law, to provide them services. And when we don't, they go to an out-of-district placement, or when we can't. So it really is cost effective on our end to get one teacher. One student going out of district on average is about $70,000. And right now we have several students that we are giving quite a bit of services to. So we're stretched thin. We have 2 teachers right now that are covering basically 2 positions each. We have paraprofessionals that are running from place to place in the building to cover everything that needs to be covered. So it is cost effective. I know it seems counterintuitive to add someone in, but I think in the long run, it will serve our students better to have as much services in-house as we possibly can to provide them with the least restrictive environment, which is the law.
So similar to Somerset Berkley, which has struggled over the last several budget cycles with adding additional staff to special education. It's really just to try to keep costs for the district down, even though obviously adding additional people brings costs up slightly, but certainly one out of district placement could more than pay for that teacher, correct?
Absolutely.
Mr. Lynch, you indicated earlier in your budget presentation that we needed to replace a van. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yes, we have 4 special ed vans, and 2 of which have approximately 200,000 miles on them, and a third one that has about 170,000 miles on it. So we have to be proactive because it's only a matter of time before one of them dies. So we start sinking more money into them than they're worth, just like a personal vehicle.
So if we choose not to replace the van, what would the cost of the district be? We'd have to outsource that transportation, correct?
Yes, that can be, excuse me, that could be upwards of over 200 a day.
Okay.
Say that again? Was that mileage you asked?
No.
No,
Oh,
so for example, if one student that we transport ourselves right now on our vans were to switch over to be transported by an outside company, it could be up to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 per year.
So the question I have is the amount of years that we normally average of a vehicle, and what's the average mileage per year? What does that correlate to what we use every year?
I don't know offhand how many miles we put on a year,
Okay.
but I do know our newest van is at least 5 years old.
Okay.
Mrs. Porter?
I believe the ones that we're looking at are 2008 is the newer one that we're looking to replace. Is it 2008?
Would an idea of leasing any of these be cheaper than outright owning them? Is that an idea of looking at as far as leasing these vehicles?
I think
We could look into that, but the concern would be the
I
large.
think miles wise, we'd probably go over, because the vans do travel out of town.
Okay.
So if we have students that go to an out of district placement, for example, it might be in Middleborough, we've had a student in Walpole, we've had students in Seekonk.
Okay.
So they do travel quite a bit, so
Okay.
I'm certainly not an expert on leasing, but I do know mileage.
No, I
is a
was just
factor.
wondering, that's why I asked what the average mileage
years ago.
Yeah, we did, when I first got here, we had we were paying $63,000 to transport a student that was in a wheelchair. That's why we bought our first wheelchair van, and we were able to lease it for $10,000 a year, and we were able to, we leased to buy. It was a lease to buy program, which is what we want to do, because we did end up, it got totaled in an accident, but we did end up, that was well worth the money we paid for it.
Thank you.
I got 2 more.
We can look into that.
2 more.
Sure.
I noticed looking at the line item budget that the superintendent's salary line is flat year over year. Do you want to comment on that at all?
Well, I'm currently in negotiations with Mr. Patrick, so I'd rather not comment on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Last, generally speaking, historically, the town has been unable to meet any budgetary requests in excess of the 2 or 2.5%. Can you speak to what you anticipate the district will be looking at if, as we know last year, we attempted to find an education override specifically for the high school at that point in time, but that was obviously defeated. But if you could speak to what you believe the type of cuts we would be looking at if we were looking at growth close to that 2.5% marker. And as I indicated earlier, the $192,000 that we are looking at as additional special education costs this year are in excess of the 2.5%.
Right.
And as our finance committee friends can tell us, 2.5% is probably optimistic given the current climate at the state level. It's probably not likely that we'd see an increase of greater than 2.5% as a community. So looking at an increase of greater than that, might be asking quite a bit. So you could just talk to what you.
Sure. It would be extremely problematic, to say the least, because $500,000 of this $900,000 increase are costs that we're just putting into to keep our budget. The positions that were restored through donations and that expensive outside placement I mentioned. And then we would have to stay with the current reading program that is 7 years old, approximately 7 years old, which we want to replace. We'd be looking at the same scenarios that we looked at last year. We'd be faced, the committee and the administrative team and the whole community would be looking at A, larger class sizes, or B, would be looking at the structure of the day in the arts classes, because those positions alone are $300,000, and then you have the school choice money that's has been depleted for another almost $200,000. If we didn't have at least a 5% increase, we'd be in huge trouble.
As far as school choice goes, I think, what do we lose, about almost 10% kids this year? I think it's fair to assume that we'll probably lose at least another 10% next year.
They seem to be moving to town, right?
Well,
One way or another.
Yeah, exactly.
You had indicated that we had 97 students at the beginning of the year that were school choice, and now it's 90.
Now it's 90.
But the population is up 3, so that's a net shift of 10, because now we have 7 fewer school choice kids even though our population is up 3. So there's 10 more students that are now being paid for by Berkley taxpayers 100% with no compensation from another district. So that's a pretty, that by itself is a pretty big change in funding sources.
Absolutely.
My understanding that as we, if we were to lose, as we were looking through the arts or larger class sizes, there were no more school choice 2 students that could leave or would leave and go back to their district. I understand that they come here because of the type of education we're able to provide. If they were to leave, what would that look like in our budget?
Well, for every 10 kids, that's $50,000. Every 10 school choice students that leave us, whether they leave going to another district, going to their home district, so to speak, or if they happen to move to town, their parents buy here, for every 10, it's $50,000, which is basically a young teacher's salary.
But in the case of this year, when you talk about losing 7 and then adding 10, it's way more than 50,000 because now we're educating them, 100% as opposed to receiving any kind of compensation.
Correct.
From another district.
Especially if it happens after October 1st, because we don't see our Chapter 70 funding is built on our enrollment numbers from October 1st, so not December 1st or January 1st.
So is it fair to say that we're at a bit of a crossroads, and we've been shrinking year over year over year, but certainly this year, without any ability to achieve the budget that you're laying out, certainly it's just the beginning of the budget season, so there's still a lot of things that can happen. But if we were looking at a budget that was close to last year's budget, would you say that there would be significant programmatic loss this year?
Yes, absolutely.
Facing not just what we faced last year, but probably more.
Quite possibly. Because you remember our operating budget doesn't include those 5 positions, doesn't include the special needs teacher that we've been discussing tonight. It doesn't include the 4 teachers that we had to put into the budget from school choice because of depleting numbers.
So Mr. Lynch, I think last, I'm sorry, Mr.
No, okay.
Mr. Lynch, last week when we met, you had talked about the total increase
in the budget, over last year. And I think you quoted, that 10%, almost, 2/3 of the total increase was related to, was basically instructional costs, which is the addition of the,
Yes.
of the 5 UAs, the 4 teachers coming over from school choice, the addition of a
Yes,
special ed.
10.88% is attributed to that.
And then, in addition, how much is that of the increase in the budget is due simply contractual steps and lanes and on the teaching contract?
2 to 3%.
Yeah.
And about 1% is that new position and para that we mentioned. Any questions? Mr. Hope, I've been waiting for you.
Well, to start with, I'm largely going to need to digest. This is as you can well appreciate, about 4 times what our anticipated revenue growth is going to be for the entire town. So something's going to give somewhere, and that's being addressed by the committee that Mr. Larrabee sits on, that I sit on, and some others sit on. A couple of requests, but I'm going to start with a couple of the questions. With regards to salaries, I believe you said that we are negotiating teacher salaries this year.
That's
So
right.
what was your assumption for salary growth?
We cannot comment on that.
So this budget's low by probably a couple percent for the
Possibly.
instructional lines. Additionally, you said your salary increase wasn't in here either, so we're still further decremented from what you really want or need.
We
Is that
can't
correct?
comment on
We're not
contractual.
gonna discuss negotiations.
So
I'm
While
not
we're
asking
in
the
negotiations.
negotiations thing, I'm trying to set the expectation that this budget is probably low.
I don't think we know that.
Well, if you negotiate a zero salary increase with zero increase or change in benefits, excellent. That's not realistic. So that's me to understand where this is likely to go.
If I may, there is an assumption in the budget for an increase, correct? We just can't comment on what
That's
that
correct.
assumption
We
is.
cannot
Say that
comment on
again?
the percentage.
There is an assumption in the budget for for teachers' contract, but we can't comment on what that assumption is.
Okay, that's a different answer than what I was hearing before.
So that is out of that 70% of the operating budget of the school, that number of 5,872,000, that monies, there is the proposed increase or the allotted monies as far as the percentage for the school teachers and the superintendent, or just the school teachers?
All I can say is there's an assumption in the budget.
Okay.
We can't start
There's an
breaking
increase
down where they
accounted for
are.
and
and,
assumed, we just can't discuss.
Correct.
Okay.
Got it, thank you. I didn't want to, I was thinking away there was a total miss and it was going. Okay. I'm a little confused and would like you to address the back to transportation again. You had said if we didn't own the vans, our cost would be significantly increased, but yet you got a line here that says outsourced transportation, it's only 10K as opposed to the 40K number that you were using. So I don't understand the difference.
Mrs. Donnelly can
Yeah,
elaborate on that.
I'd be glad to. So the $10,000 is in case we have a student who we're not able to transport on our vans, for whatever reason. So for example, all of the children start school at the same time, whether they're here or at another placement. So if we have a student, for example, who's going to a placement and we don't have a van driver available, then we are required to transport them by law. So we have to contract out. Right now, knock on wood, sorry to jinx you, Andrea, we don't have any students. Everyone is being transported on our own vans right now. But we can't guarantee that. I've been here 9 years. Every year we've had a student who has needed to be transported by a contract by another country. So that's what that's an excess in case our own vans are not able to cover a student.
So that's to address a point issue as opposed to having our vans in June.
Yes.
Could that be negotiated through Bloom too?
We put out a bid and we take the cheapest one. So unfortunately, Bloom is doing a Taunton contract right now for most of their special education. So they've actually not bid for the last couple of years that we've had to do it. It tends to be Taunton motorized, sometimes Fisher, Somerset. But we do try to find the most competitive rate.
And the Somerset Berkley Regional High School actually did most of its special ed transportation through outsourcing up until just a few years ago. And the model that's being used here at Berkley K-8 is served as the backbone for the model that they're using at the high school district. And I can tell you from having been on the budget committee for several years that that's been a tremendous boon for the district because it saves us a great deal of money. The outsourcing of transportation is a tremendous expense.
Okay, the budget subcommittee, and that consists of myself, Mrs. Bruno, and Mr. Dean, wanted to. We wanted to point out tonight was our different funding sources, how this budget grows. As you'll see here, our main sources. Chapter 70, you can follow that. This is fiscal year 16, 17, and 18. So you see Chapter 70 funds, and I'll spend some time on that because we always expect that to increase. The last few years, it only has increased $15 or $20 per student, which is very insignificant, as you can see. Last year, it only increased $23,000. A year before that, it increased $40,000. So you'll see Chapter 70 funding was, and I'll round off here, $3,900,000 in FY16. Last year, if we rounded off, it would still be $3,900,000. And this year, it wouldn't be much above that. So $3,957,968. So basically $3,960,000 compared to $3,934,000 the previous year. So you can see, and this is when people talk about net school spending. The state isn't holding up their end of the bargain. The foundation reports has, in the summary, indicated that the net school spending money is $1.2 billion less than it should be, mostly because of special ed costs and health insurance costs. So, and you can see the system that they're using is outdated. It was established in 1993. Over 90% of the districts are well over Chapter 70 and well over net school spending as far as the town's responsibility. We currently are 8.8% above net school spending. That's one of the lowest communities in the state. Some of our good friends are over 30% above net school spending. And then you'll see this next line item is the town paid budget. And you'll see in FY16, $3,586,000. FY17, $3,600,000. $94,500. And then FY 18, $3,462,000. So you'll see that the town funding for K-8 was $230,000 less this year than it was last year. And then school choice funds, $520,800 in 16. FY 17, $529,500. And as I've mentioned, and we've had dialogue about tonight, our FY 18 funding is $450,000.
Mr. Lynch, while you're on that one specifically, because that was one of my questions. The cherry sheet said we were supposed to do round numbers 540,000-ish. Can you comment on what the $90,000 delta is? Because 7 students down would equal 35,000, not 90,000.
Mrs. Porter? Well, I know that the numbers, I can comment, and then
Yeah, well, it ended last year lower. I mean, it was a combination because it said 547, it came in 526 at the end of last year. And then we lost those other ones in addition. So it was a 2-year combination that ended up now where, as in October numbers, brought us down to 90.
and those numbers are reported quarterly.
Do me a favor and forward me the math. So I'm not seeing it. I'm facts and figure guy. You know me.
Okay.
We're talking about the school choice now?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's not always a $5,000 per student.
Understand
Special-
partial years, all this other
Not
stuff.
all special education students also, that, so it's not always strictly $5,000.
Can you embellish more on that?
Meaning if it's a special education student, that number is
A little higher.
higher.
Okay.
But you know, one thing that often comes up that I think we should throw out there right now, people have asked me, what if a child comes here that's a school choice child that we need, that has to be an out-of-district or collaborative student? That is not on us. That Mrs. Donnelly, our special ed director, would inform the special ed director in the sending town, whether it be Taunton, Fall River, Lakeville, what have you. And that would be on their dime, so to speak. That would be their responsibility, not the town of Berkeley's.
So if we had a student that came into district that was one of those students that we're talking about with the collaborative assessment increase, so we had to send someone out to a different district to provide them with the best education that they could receive, and they were coming to us as a school choice kid from Taunton, for example. The cost associated with sending them to that special out-of-district placement wouldn't come to the town of Berkeley. It would go back to Taunton.
It actually has happened, that we did have a student that his team determined should have more restrictive placement, and that child returned back to the sending town.
So we as the town of Berkeley, if we have a kid that has to go to collaborative, that's when we bear the full cost.
If it's a Berkeley.
Correct.
Right.
That's
Okay.
Except we have a student now who Mrs. Donnelly alluded to, that the state informed us that had to be announced a residential placement, so they are paying half of that. But that's calculated into the budget that we've gone over before. And then you'll see in FY 18, we have community donations of $160,650, and that's from the parents, residents, and businesses. And then for the South Coast Collaborative leases and service fee, as you see, that the school has generated more funds. In year 1, we leased 2 classrooms for a total of $40,000. Then last year, we leased 2 classes at the community school and 2 classes here, one for $20,000 and one for $25,000. That's $85,000. That has kept our out-of-district placement cost down because we can work it that way. And then this year, you see that as $110,000, because the collaborative called me when they saw that we were struck with these unified arts cuts, and they said we will provide $25,000 for the services that they provide, because they do participate in our art classes, our music classes, and our PE classes. So South Coast, and they didn't have to do that, but South Coast Collaborative provided an additional $25,000. So you'll see our total budgets here, even with that, even with the $270,650 of our, so to make our budget that we're operating right now out of $8,140,794, you can still see that it's less than FY17, last year's budget of $8,243,479. And our budget right now, even with these donations of $170,000, is only $100,000 above FY16, and without those donations, this budget would be less than it was 2 years ago.
So
Hold on. Yes.
So it was my understanding that the money that the South Coast Collaborative gave, the $25,000, that was a one-time thing. So that's not going to be in FY19.
The additional 25,000? Yes, in all likelihood. Mr. Hope?
really appreciate the analysis. This is great. It's almost exactly what I've been asking for a couple of years. If you added, one thing that's not here is if you added in the grants, and I don't know if if you've now gone flat on grant funding from
We've
where you
actually
had
gone
been
down.
before.
We've gone down 10 to 15% the last 5 years.
Because I know, well, that's what I was alluding to. I don't remember where you really took the bump. I think it was 2009 or 10, somewhere around there is when
It
you
keeps going down.
when it really dropped. But put that component in here because you're paying for other teachers, et cetera, out of
Right. We
grants.
pay for
That would
some
complete the
special ed
picture.
teachers, we pay for some reading specialists, partial salary, we pay for supplies, and we pay for professional development.
So I think that would show
Can you
the
click on
struggle.
that graph, please?
Is it, do you have it minimized, or I just want to go to the right place, so that I don't make it any worse for you?
I'll get it, I'll get it.
All right, I just didn't know where you put it.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Can you focus in on that? Okay.
So I apologize, I'm having more troubles. But what we have here is the funding sources and how they're combined. And you can see where Chapter 70 funding is slightly above town funding. Then we have school choice here, community donations here, and then South Coast Educational Collaborative lease and service fees here, and the total budget here. And the colors, they go in order. I'm colorblind, so we have dark purple, light purple, and I believe light blue there. But they go in order of FY 16, 17, 18, and if you look at the stack, so to speak, or the bar graphs, you can see that Chapter 70, as we mentioned, is almost level funded. Slightly down in the town side. School choice, a little bit downward. And community donations, up. It's hard to tell on this one, but this is in the millions over here. And then South Coast is over here, but the total budgets are right there.
Mr. Rich. Oh, I wanted to get my nickel back so I could finish my questions.
Sure.
Okay. fixing acquisitions, you're down about round number 67,000. Is that the result of lowering unemployment to 10,000? Is the delta on that unemployment from this year? Is that what the delta costs are?
No, that's not on unemployment.
Yeah, well, yeah, that, the original budget before the charitable donations, it was for 130 to be in unemployment, and now we only have 10 there. So yes, that is the delta.
Okay.
The only other thing in there would be the acquisition of the van that we lost over.
For oil, what was your assumption on oil? Flat? Did you put in a nominal increase?
We put in a very slight increase. But we don't, that's, as I said, that's variable. We're paying $1.76 a gallon right now.
One more time?
We're paying $1.76 a gallon right now.
Okay. Now, three requests. One, you listed numerous things that were metrics and numbers when you let off. Can you please forward that to the Finance Committee, those things that you listed definitively?
Sure, absolutely.
Next request is, can you provide the committee the line item budget?
Absolutely. We will do that once the school committee approves the preliminary budget.
And would you and the committee be receptive of spending time with the Finance Committee earlier in the budget season than we've typically done, such that we can do some additional drill downs, fact finding, understanding, rather than being at the end where
Absolutely.
what we got. So,
I think I can speak for them on that.
as you know, our kickoff for this, the formal kickoff for budget season is about 2 weeks from now. And that will lay out the calendar and whatnot, and with eyes
Sure.
when we would like, and work to get what works
Okay.
for both of us. So, between the fiscal task force and what we need to do here, I think meeting earlier and a little more frequently is probably in order.
Okay.
Try to tackle this year.
Want to toss me the nickel? Mr. Lynch, you had indicated that there was a subcommittee that's been working on building needs. A lot of the different projects and needs of our facilities aren't really in the budget in any way, shape, or form. Can you speak to some of the things that you see coming immediately down the pipe that will be required to be looked at by the community? One of the things that Somerset unfortunately didn't stay on top of was building repairs, and certainly we want to do that. We have a lot of facilities that are relatively new, and then we want to keep them in good operating shape. So what are some of the things that you see coming down the pike that aren't in this budget at all?
No, they're not, and they're major. Yeah. I met with a subcommittee that included Mr. Larrabee, it included Dan Hebda, who's here tonight. It included Derek Costa, who does work at University of Massachusetts Dartmouth on similar projects, and along with Tim McCarthy, our building and maintenance supervisor. And we walked inside and out of each of the schools to determine what our capital needs were going to be, and from 1 to 10 years out. Some of the major projects off the top of my head are the concrete work in front of the community school. And I invite anyone to walk outside of the community school where the children enter for the bus entrance, to look at the wall next to the preschool playground that's in front of the school that's sinking in. It's sunk in probably 6 to 8 inches already. The concrete slabs are approximately 4 by 4. The corners are chipping, and just like potholes that are filled by the DPW in the winter, as soon as ice gets under there and expands, they pop. We've had some staff fall down because of that. If you look at the ramp the handicap ramp, that needs to be completely redone. I had an architect, actually the OPM, Dan Tavares, who was the OPM for the high school project, came over as a favor to us to walk the outside of the building, to look at and if you walk along that outside of the building, you'll see that the design was flawed because it slopes. All the water goes right to the building. And that walkway should be reconfigured and redesigned as well as the ramp. The ramp right now isn't sloped slightly enough. It's too steep, if you will. That's a significant problem. The roofs on each of these schools are going to have to be replaced. This roof right now has probably another 5 to 10 years. The roof over there is 5 to 10 years older than this one. So that one's going to have to be replaced sooner rather than later. All the lighting at the community school, as I alluded to earlier, needs to be replaced. Mr. McCarthy has contacted an electrician to give us a better estimate of that. And then we have some smaller programs here. The windows at the community school, we were able to work with Stroney Glass, who was able to readjust those this year for a nominal fee of $2,600 because wind was coming in. There goes the heat on days like last week and today. And if it was a driving rain, we'd have rain coming, water coming through those rooms. Those windows have been adjusted, but they should be replaced. We've also talked about that with the Berkley building inspector as well. That those should be replaced in the near future. Those are and the gym floors. You've all been at the town meeting. That community school floor is well overdue. The gym floor of being replaced, and this floor here as well. People forget that this building has now been operating 16, 17 years, and so that gym floor could be replaced as well. We get hit every time when our insurance company comes through about the bleachers. The bleachers in each school should be replaced, especially the ones over in this school, we're told. That's just the major one. We came up with lists, which we have, which I can provide you with that meeting, and it has the priorities as this subcommittee sees it, especially using Mr. McCarthy's judgment on that.
Two quick questions with regard to the list. Was it forwarded to the Capital Improvements Committee?
I haven't seen Dr. Morov yet. What I also want to do before I do that is I want to meet with Jack McCarthy, who's the Executive Director of Mass School Building Authority, to have either him or one of his associates to come down. I did meet and at a conference that Mr. Ghilarducci and I went to in November. It was the Joint School Committee Superintendent's Conference down in Hyannis. He was at one of the sessions, and I did ask him, part of the answer I already knew, but for any projects over $250,000, you are eligible for up to 50% reimbursement. But my key question to him was, can we combine projects from different schools? And the answer is yes. So say if you wanted to do, just pick projects, doing the roofs at each school, the gym floors at each school, the lighting at the community school, the concrete work at the community school, those all could be combined into one project. Then the town would have to, or I would have to write a statement of interest. Have the school committee approve that, have the Board of Selectmen approve that, then that would go to the Mass School Building Authority, and the School Building Authority would have to put us on a list, if you will, of the need for the project to move forward.
The other quick question was, it marries up with the Capital Improvements Committee was, were you included in the data call that the town administrator handed out asking for capital program requirements? Needs to get to the town administrator as well.
Okay.
So that we have a total collection of everything.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Comments from the school committee?
I think it's important to note that the size of the budget increase is taken by itself is rather large. And I think Mr. Lynch has done a very good job of laying out exactly, how we got here and how important it is at this point in time that we try to determine what kind of education we're going to be providing our students here in Berkeley. As Mr. Patrick has said so many times, we have to decide what kind of school district we're going to be, at least on the budget side. Certainly I know all the professionals here that work in buildings are going to work hard, whether the budget increase is what we're looking for or something short of that. But there becomes a limit to what everyone's capable of doing. And certainly we don't want to sell our kids short. We don't want to have a less than adequate education for our students. Certainly everybody's going to work hard to do the best they can, like I just said, but we're sort of at that point where the rubber's hitting the road. I mean, it's been doing it for years, right, Mr. Patrick? And this year certainly seems to be kind of the edge of the cliff, if you will, for the Berkley K-8 school district.
And by the way, you should also note, every year when the Berkeley students go to any high school in the area that we're involved in, we usually wind up with any number between 4, 6, or 8 of the students in the top 10. So that's attributed to the Berkeley schools here who do the job. Every time I go to the National Honor Society meetings with the inductees, we have more than our share of inductees at the National Honor Society. So I think our two principals deserve a phenomenal accolade from this town because they do an outstanding job. And I talk to Somerset teachers who say they know the difference and they can see the difference in the Berkeley kids who come into that school versus the Somerset kids. So thank you.
If I may say one more thing, because I just like to talk.
Good.
I'm kind of aware of that. I think we all have to realize the community does its very best. I mean, there is a limit to what we can do. There's a limit to what the taxpayers are able to pay. There's a limit to how much the town is able to grow on a year-to-year basis. I think we're all aware of this, and it's not, it's not something that is anyone's fault. It's just, it's the way this community functions. The needs of the community grow at a faster rate than our revenues do, and I think, Mr. Hope, you can back me up on that. It's been happening forever. So, certainly, I know we're all going to have to work together and do the best we can. Just like last year, there was a great deal of disappointment, but everybody banded together and we figured out a solution. Obviously, that solution was fantastic, but as you can tell from the budget, it's also part of the problem as we look forward to FY19. I don't want anyone at home or in this audience to think that we were able to fix the problem long term. We really weren't. Everything that we did last year, which was fantastic, again, everybody's effort was tremendous, but it was very temporary, and I think this evening's budget really illustrates that. All we did was, in essence, kick the can down the road a year, but we still are faced with the possibility of losing our arts and music programs again. So there's really a lot that we're going to have to decide as a community over the next 6 months.
Well, actually, I said that several years ago. There's a lot we're going to have to decide. And look, this is the 12th budget that I voted on, and I've always encouraged the administration to put out a budget that's going to educate the kids well in Berkeley. And that's what they do, and that's what we have.
That's it.
In what the town said.
We thank you for that. This preliminary budget needs to be voted.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to vote on a budget presented of $8,316,239. Motion, second?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have 3 ayes. Next, mid-cycle review, progress report. This is not the yearly evaluation, this is just an update on, this is a progress report put out by the school committee on goals set by the superintendent. And I have tallied the votes for, put out by the school committee for the superintendent on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different goals. The first goal, the district improvement goal number 1, which is the same as the district improvement goal that we commented on earlier, that we actually amended, voted that is on target. District improvement goal number 2, which was the superintendent will work with the administrative team during the 17-18 school year to create prioritize capital improvement needs for Berkley Public Schools. On target. Professional practice goal in the 2017-18 school year, the office of the superintendent will increase communications with the school committee. Although that was not unanimous, the majority of the school committee says it was on target. And professional practice goal number 2, the superintendent will oversee implementation of the Bay State Reading Initiative by conducting bi-weekly discussions with the admin team and participating in classroom walkthroughs in the school year. On target. And the student learning goal, which was during the school year, the superintendent will form and oversee ELA curriculum review committee, resulting in new ELA curriculum document and materials for the school department. And that has not been started yet.
Correct.
And
That will be formed in the next couple weeks.
So yeah, I will send you my printer is just not printing right now. I'll send you the tally. Okay. All right. We do need to appoint a new member to the school committee. However, this, I'm informed, will have to be done in a joint meeting with the selectmen, which we will have to
Schedule a joint meeting.
schedule a joint meeting with the selectmen to appoint a new member.
Mr. Catino indicated to me that would be a selectmen's meeting.
Well, I'm assuming we can't get on the agenda for this Wednesday.
I know I can't be there.
It's on the agenda to be spoken about on the agenda, but it's not like we can't. So,
Okay. Yeah, well, we can't get the school committee on that stuff. So we'll have to, so selectmen meet when?
this coming Wednesday.
And then every other Wednesday? I can tell you this, I don't have a Wednesday open until March. Myself, but look, you don't need me, I guess.
Oh, come on, Dave, we want your happy smiling face, right?
Well, here's the thing, okay, coach hockey, and we play every Wednesday night.
The next school committee meeting is the 12th. Could the selectmen come to a school committee meeting to do that?
I don't see why we wouldn't be able to. I can certainly, I'm sorry, heads are in the way. I can certainly bring it and we discuss it tomorrow night. I'm sorry,
Sure.
Wednesday
It would
night.
be February 12th.
Hold on, wait a minute, one second. What time does the selectmen meeting start? 6? Hold on one second.
Is there any way that you could forward a couple of dates to us and we could talk about it tomorrow, Wednesday at our meeting? Is that okay?
The 31st of January is their meeting?
And then it's 14 days from then.
Well, I can't. All right, I'll have to send some dates, but.
Yeah, just send some dates and then we'll discuss it on Wednesday. If you can get it to me by Wednesday, Gil and I can present it to the board and see if we can pick a date out of here. If Wednesdays don't work for you, maybe we can come here.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Mrs. Cocker, perhaps you could ask them if February 12th would work. Thank you.
Any resignations or retirements?
No, we do not. We do not have any new ones to announce.
Appointments, transfers?
No.
And, okay, so at this time, we are looking to go into executive session, recommended in accordance with MGL Chapter 38, Section 21, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation and/or collective bargaining with Berkley Teachers Association, and return only to open session, only to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming. It's the best attendance we've had in years.
Surprised you made it that long.